to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining the call today. We're going to talk about the Spectrum UIM integration, a highly anticipated topic. We've been talking about this for some time now. The way we'll do this is we'll cover what we have done more to tighten this integration, what to expect in the coming few weeks, and then of course, as always, we have a live demo and then the upcoming plans for the integration as well. So there will be a live demo. We will cover a bunch of things in the demo as well, and of course, as always, while you can reserve your questions towards the end, but if you feel compelled enough to ask something during the slides or demo, absolutely feel free to stop us, and then we'll be happy to clarify things for you. So with that, let me just move ahead. I think it's taking a bit of time to render, or is it just me? Okay, so we are at slide number 3. Is it just my screen, or is it taking time, Melissa, to render the slide?
Yeah, I'm actually not seeing anything, so you might want to just share desktop.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, oh yeah, I think it is. I think it's just a bit of a delay, I think. I don't know. So Sheena, probably you might want to share the desktop. So while you do that, I'll just talk through these couple of things, right? So we are finally at a point where we are very close to delivering this integration to the market. So I know we did this a couple times earlier. I know when we were talking to a few of our friends out there who have been bearing with us with this integration for a few months now, and when we told them that we are close to GA, and then could you please help beta validate and test this, the response was once again, and we were like, okay, sure, we understand the frustration, we understand the concerns you've had in the past, but as I said, while we are not supposed to talk about dates on public forums, but before end of September, we will be releasing this integration. And as I said, the demo that you'll see here, we'll talk about what exactly would be there as part of that. So it is there, it is ready. We will talk briefly how customers tested it and what was the reactions as well. As I said, the story remains the same, right? We want to make sure that we have these key capabilities within the portfolio, systems management through UIM, network management and fault through Spectrum. We want to make sure that the users of both these tools are able to leverage these capabilities across the tools seamlessly as much as possible. So a Spectrum user will be able to not only see the topology, root cause, and fault isolation across the systems environments, the UIM user now will be able to leverage the fault management and root cause analysis from Spectrum within the UIM console itself. So it's a win-win for both the groups. Not just that, as I said, our goal was that operational workflow simplification. So the ability for a UIM user to be able to not only see a Cisco switch alarm, for example, but also to be able to drive their workflows on that. So clearing the alarm or closing the alarm, assigning a troubleshooter. And when you do that, that information gets synced and replicated on the Spectrum side as well, and vice versa. So the ability to make these things a bit simpler. And of course, when we were working through this, one of the feedback that we kept getting from the customers that we were working with was, I want to be able to do this as per my granularity, my convenience, meaning there were customers when we had initially turned the synchronization completely out of the box as part of our testing. There were a few customers out there who wanted the synchronization controlled by their teams. So meaning I want to only synchronize information going from UIM to Spectrum. I want to only send information from Spectrum to UIM, or I want to do it both ways. So we have made sure that we are giving that level of flexibility for the users to select and control the level of data and alarms going back and forth. So that's what you will get as part of this integration. As I said, again, in the next couple of weeks, we are very close to GA this time, and we will eventually go GA in the next few weeks. So in the next slide, if you go, please, Sriram. As I said, I just wanted to give you a brief idea about how we went about it. So we had around 16 customers participating, trying this kit, the latest kit. The feedback has been reasonably good. They had run into some initial clunkiness, and it was something related to how we were delivering this, but we have cleaned that out. The latest builds, the latest refresh images have been a lot cleaner. So I think we feel very good about it. People tested all the key scenarios that we're going to demo right now in their test environment. We've got some good feedback. If you see here, we've mapped out what are some of those feedback. A couple of things that came out that we were not able to completely do this time, but we have started to line up things for our next iteration of this integration, which will be released in the next few months. And we are picking up, for example, things like root cause for UIM alarms. We are picking up things for additional metrics to be added that would be shown on Spectrum side, for example, for servers, for virtual machines, and so on and so forth. So the engagement has been pretty good. The feedback has been good, and both are not just these 16 customers, but even our pre-sales and field teams who have been very vocal, and they've been hitting us on our heads for the last couple months for this integration. They feel fairly good about how things have played out as well. So as I said, there's still work to be done. Like most other capabilities that we get to market, we'll continue to work on that. But what we are about to release in the next few weeks, we feel very good about it, not just from a functionality perspective, but also from a quality and stability perspective. We've incorporated everything that we've seen out there, and we feel, as I said, very confident about it. If you go to the next slide, Sheelam, I think the next slide is going to be the architecture slide. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. The only thing I'll highlight for you guys is something at the center, the Spectrum gateway, if you see there. So what we have done is, I think people who followed us with this integration for the past 18 months or so, our earlier integration was southbound gateway based, and then we used some other mechanisms to integrate, and we were seeing some inconsistencies with that. So what we have done is we've ripped off that earlier mechanism of integrating, and we are using this new piece of software between the two components. It's called the Spectrum Gateway Probe. So essentially, we are using the probe framework on the UIM side, and we've written code so that this probe can then be easily deployed. So while it says a probe, it's essentially a gateway between UIM and Spectrum. And what it has done for us is, it is given that it's all fresh written code, and then it's using tried and tested mechanisms that UIM has used with probes. We are getting a lot more scalability, a lot more elegance with the entire workflows that we have out there. So as I said, our internal testing is showing a lot of not just stability but scale improvements across large environments too. So we feel, as I said, the reason we delayed some of these things was to make sure that we are testing this well enough, not just internally but with our field teams and our customers, to be able to feel very confident that, okay, when we go out with this capability, and then when we have some labs around this at PA World in the coming couple of months, we want to feel fairly confident. And at this point in time, we do feel that. So with that brief introduction for what we are going to do with the integration, let me turn it over to my colleague Sheenam. She's a new entrant into our Spectrum product management team. Just joined a couple months back, and one of the first challenges we gave her was to take care of the Spectrum UIM integration. So I think it's turned out pretty well, and she's going to run us through the details there. So Sheenam, all yours.
Thanks, Kiran. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today, and we're talking about the CA Spectrum UIM integration. So before I get into the overview and the new capabilities that we have added in this integration, I just wanted to talk about the prerequisites, because from our experience, we have seen a lot of users, a lot of customers asking this question. So for this integration to work, the Spectrum servers should be at version 10.1 or 10.1.1. The UIM, the CA UIM should be at 8.4.2 or higher, and the recommendation from our side is to use 8.4.7, which is currently in beta. And then the NIS API should be at version 8.4.2 or higher. So moving on to the quick overview. So these are some of the use cases that you will see, some of the updates that you will see in this integration. You will be able to export and correlate UIM inventory to Spectrum, and we would provide the bidirectional capabilities to sync and drive alarm workflows from Spectrum to UIM and vice versa. And the NIS API update has been added to support the latest version that is already mentioned as a prerequisite as well. And the last point is something I guess that most of you would have seen, as Kiran mentioned. This was the point which we started with for correlating Spectrum inventory from global collection to UIM. So moving on to the detailed use cases very quickly, we want to have more time spent on the demo. So these are the use cases that we're going to show here. I have my colleague Balram, who will be demonstrating these use cases. So we'll start with exporting and correlating the UIM inventory to Spectrum, so that is where you will see the servers and the VM inventory being synced from UIM to Spectrum. And we'll also show you how we are able to manage the VM as a server out of the box. So this is one of the feedbacks that we got earlier from the customers, that we don't want a dependency on additional probe for managing the VMs as a server. So that's what has been added with this release.
Yeah, so I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Sheena, but I think that last point, I think we should just probably elaborate a bit more on that, right? So essentially, guys, the point here was in the past integration, if you have 50 virtual machines out there, and you don't want to monitor all 50 virtual machines, you just want to monitor 2 VMs which are critical servers running some critical application. Now, our earlier design warranted you to not only have, for example, the CDM probe to monitor those VMs for the server metrics, but we also warranted you to have the VMware probe from UIM just to get the inventory probe virtual machines as well. Now, that was not only cumbersome to demo and to do a POC from a field perspective, but just an additional unnecessary step if you didn't want the relationship between ESX and VMs and just wanted to monitor one VM as a vanilla server. So what we have changed and added, and this makes things a bit simpler as well for those scenarios, is now you can just have one of the probes monitor that VM as a server, and you don't need any other infrastructure to monitor that. I'm sorry, Sheena, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you. All right. So the next use case we'll be looking at is the bidirectional view of alarms. So we, as Kiran mentioned during the architecture slide also, we're going to have support for sync of alarms from Spectrum into UIM and vice versa. Now, the additional thing that you'll get here is the configuration or the flexibility, where you can choose the options for the direction that you want to have for the alarm sync. So if you want only the alarms to be synced from Spectrum to UIM, you can do that. And you can as well do it the other way around. If you want to see only the UIM alarms synced into Spectrum, that option is available. And then we have the both option, which is syncing both ways, and this is the default option shipped in with the product. So once the alarms have been synced, you can also drive alarm workflows. What we mean there is updating troubleshooter in either of the tools, which gets reflected on both the places, acknowledging or clearing an alarm in UIM or Spectrum. Again, it gets reflected on both the places. And then if there's a ticket ID created in either of the tools, Spectrum or UIM, that gets synced and gets reflected in both the tools. So the idea here is, as Kiran was mentioning in the beginning, right, that you don't have to use or be dependent on both the tools. You can use either one of them as your single point of contact or single point of tool there for monitoring.
Right. Yes. So that last point, Shinam, I think that's critical as well. I think we added that based on the feedback we got as part of the validation as well as our sales team, right? Yeah.
Yes. This was, I guess, one of the, as far as I understand, one of the most awaited features for the integration. So yes, it was added on the basis of the feedback.
Right. So the ticket sync, I think this was added just a couple sprints back, and I think the team is still testing this. But we will have this as part of the GA kit in the next couple weeks. But as I said, this was important. I think we were talking to customers, our sales guys, and while we had other information synced up, this ticket ID was one thing which was mentioned as something critical. We didn't have a way to do that easily, but again, kudos to Balram, who's the architect of this integration as well, and the team out there. They figured out a way to do that. So sure.
Yep, and for our customers who are present here and who are also participating in the beta validation program, it will be available in our next refresh, which we are targeting for next week. All right. And then last but not the least, you can export and correlate Spectrum inventory from a global collection to UIM. So you can see the Spectrum inventory in UIM and also the metrics which are available in UIM, and the physical interfaces of the devices which are configured in GC will be synced to UIM. So now I'll turn over the ball to Balram for demo. All right, Balram, all yours.
Thank you, Shinam. Hello, everyone. This is Balram from Spectrum team. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I will take you through the demo of Spectrum UIM integration in today's session. Let me share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll begin with the configuration to enable the integration. We will start with configuration on the Spectrum administration page. So we'll have to go on to the UIM configuration menu item in the administration page, and you'll see a list of entries which has to be configured for the integration to be enabled. Now, the first one is the UIM server host name, where the server exists, and the second one is the port number. The third one is the UMP server host name, and the fourth one is the port of UMP. The next one is Spectra server, which will be chosen to model the inventory that comes in from UIM on the Spectrum side. If Spectrum is unable to find out the upstream connection for that particular inventory, it will model in this landscape as default. Now you see that there are three options in the integration. So the first two are related to the inventory synchronization for the VMware virtualization technology and server management from UIM. And third option is for the Spectrum UIM bidirectional management for alarms and managing those alarm workflows, and the Spectrum inventory from global collection to the UIM. The moment you save this configuration, the integration would be enabled from the Spectrum side. Now we have to do some more configuration on the UIM side. I'll take you through that. So we'll have to go to the admin console, and we should have this probe which Kiran mentioned, the Spectrum Gateway probe installed on the UIM, and it should be activated to configure. And if we select the configure options, we see a list of configurations here. We have default probe information and log level setup. So if we come to the Spectrum configuration on this probe, we will have to mention the host name of the one-click server, the protocol that is used, and the port number, and also the credentials for the probe to contact one-click server. Along with that, we'll also have to give the global collection name that will be used to collect the inventory and sync from Spectrum to UIM. I'll just show this global collection on Spectrum. So this is the global collection that we'll use for this demonstration. All the inventory that you want should be placed in this global collection. We will also ship in a query, a locator search query, which can be utilized to create this global collection and collect all the basically needed inventory into this global collection. So going back to the configuration page. So you can configure the synchronization intervals for both inventory and alarms on this page. So you have incremental synchronization and also full synchronization modes. You can choose the interval based on the needs for monitoring your network. So as Shinam was mentioning, we also have an option to synchronize alarms only in a selected route, either from Spectrum to UIM or from UIM to Spectrum, or both bidirectional. So the default option is bidirectional. So and the last field that you see is for the ticket ID synchronization from Spectrum to UIM or from UIM to Spectrum. So this is a custom field that will be used for ticket ID. So once user configures which custom attribute holds the ticket ID, this integration probe will use that field to transfer the information from one tool to the other. So there are some actions available which user can trigger on demand if he doesn't want to wait for the synchronization interval to come. So he can synchronize alarms and inventory, both incremental and full. He can also validate the connection with Spectrum, whether the credentials are proper or not. So that's how we do the configuration. Once the configuration is done and the probe is restarted, so it is already started here. So the synchronization would begin on both sides. So we'll pick a use case which will cover various functionalities of this integration. Since this is enabled now, we'll try to start from the inventory synchronization from UIM to Spectrum. So once the integration is enabled, we'll see that the UIM inventory is on the Spectrum side under the UIM manager application on the navigation page that is shown here. So you'll see both servers and virtualization inventory getting synced into this hierarchy. So the way servers are organized is by OS, and we have, for example, Linux Linux servers or Windows servers or some other OS servers. So if we go into the servers and say we select a particular server, we'll see how we can see the metrics from UIM get shown in Spectrum. So if you select the information tab on that particular server and go into this OC view called QoS, CPU, disk memory, metric information, and select some of these metrics that are shown here. So these metrics are collected from UIM. So it will pick from UIM via the integration. So now Similarly, virtualization is organized by hierarchy. We have vCenter, data center, clusters, resources, VM and VMs. So similar to servers, we also have metrics for VMs and ESX. For example, if we select an ESX and see that there are some metrics collected for the ESX. I think, yeah, so if you see, we have some metrics like whether it is in maintenance mode or what is the VM count, how many are active, etc. So all these metrics are collected from UIM. So we'll now see the topology for this inventory that got synced. So we'll go into the universe. And see that how the topology is constructed by Spectrum. So once the inventory is into Spectrum, Spectrum will discover the upstream switch to which this inventory is connected to. For example, in the case of virtualization, it'll find out the upstream switch and creates a connection to that upstream switch to this UIM inventory. You can go into the inventory probably wait for that. Yeah. So now you see that there is an alarm on the device here, and you see that there is a critical alarm saying chassis down. So we'll go into the details of this alarm and see that there is impact, and we see that the symptom alarms are showed here. For example, blade status unknown and device has stopped responding to pulse. So this is a regular Spectrum root cause analysis. Now we'll see how this is reflected into UIM via this integration. So let me take you to the UMP. I'll take you to the global alarm view. I'll just select the, yeah, so if you see this, this alarm is synced into UIM, and we do not see the symptomatic alarms here. This is the only root cause alarm that is being shown here. If you want to see what are the symptoms, we'll have to select more and click on the symptoms tab. So this will list down the symptomatic alarms. So this is in sync with what Spectrum shows. So UIM is leveraging the Spectrum's fault isolation and root cause analysis capability to show the root cause and symptoms on the UIM NOC, right? UIM UMP. So we'll go to the device view and see the inventory view and see whether we see that information there. So this is the device that we have selected in Spectrum. So if you go and see, it lists the device and it shows the color as red, that it has some alarms on it. And if you go into alarms, you see those alarms are listed. Again, even here, we see that out of these three, this is the root cause, and the remaining two are symptoms. I think there is, yeah, this is the one. So we see the symptoms. The other two as symptoms in this. So the information is synced. Now we'll see that this alarm is generated in Spectrum because Spectrum identified the fault and did the root cause analysis. And we have seen that the alarm is also reconciled onto the exact inventory in UIM also. Now we'll see how we can use UIM to do some alarm workflows and see that the same is reflected on Spectrum. So we'll go to the global alarm view again, and we'll select this same alarm, and we'll assign a troubleshooter to this, okay, on the UIM side. So now we'll wait on Spectrum to see that this information is synced and it is showing it appropriately. So see here, assignment is empty right now. We'll wait for the sync to happen, and the administrator is assigned to look into this alarm. Yeah, there you go. So the update on the UIM side has been synced to Spectrum, and the assignment is appropriately shown. So now we'll see that this is consistent even in the web client of Spectrum. So we'll just go to web client, and yeah, so you see this this alarm here. The troubleshooter is appropriately updated. So this is all in sync on the client and on one click, and also on the UIM side. So this is one same information shown to user on any UI. So we'll see we'll also see that there are some more columns on the alarm, like the source or the UIM alarm ID, or some additional information which can be utilized. For example, source will tell that whether this alarm is generated in Spectrum or in UIM, NAS, or EMS. So that information will be available for the user to take any specific actions based on that if needed. So that is also shown here. So we'll go to some more configuration on the inventory synchronization from UIM to Spectrum. So we have to select the UIM manager and select the information tab. So we have a set of configurations here. We've seen that we've done the configuration on the admin page. The same information is shown here, and we can do additional configuration like synchronization intervals, etc. on this one-click view. Similarly for virtualization. There is a new option available now to delete any unreported entities from UIM to avoid any mismatch in the inventory in UIM and Spectrum. So there will be a new folder created inside the UIM inventory where all the unreported entities will be shown, and if needed, user can go ahead and delete those if you believe that that is not needed. So there's more configuration to VMware. So if you see data center migration, so in the cases where Spectrum was not able to find out the upstream connectivity for the virtualization inventory, and it goes ahead and models that inventory in a dedicated server based on the configuration. And later, the user discovers the upstream switch in a different landscape. In that scenario, user can choose to move the data center from the dedicated server to the landscape where the upstream switch is existing. So that additional option is also available via data center migration. Yes, so that was pretty much from the demonstration side. If there are any questions or any other queries, we can take it.
If you'd like to ask a question to Ballroom, you can hit #6 to open up your line. Okay, Karen, were we moving over to some additional slides?
Yes, Melissa, we'll be covering the future plans, and then we'll open for Q&A.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks, Balram, for your demo. So we just wanted to quickly cover what are we planning in the next few sprints for this integration. So based on the feedback that we have been getting from our beta customers and also from our earlier feedback and the backlog that we have, we've picked and prioritized a few items. Now these are what we are planning. We might do an addition based on the feedback once we collate everything at the end of the beta program. But at a high level, we are looking at mapping more events from UIM into Spectrum to provide more flexibility and customization capability, mostly for the correlation, for the event correlation for the admins. So what we mean here is, as we know today, we are mapping events for the servers and VMs. We're looking at mapping events for other types of alarms or events as well. The next item that we are planning to pick is sync cloud inventory and alarms from UIM to Spectrum for monitoring, providing selective sync for inventory or alarms based on certain parameters. Now, this is another item that we got as a feedback from our beta customers, and we're looking into it. And last but not the least, syncing maintenance schedules between UIM and Spectrum to eliminate any redundant efforts required for configuring these schedules in both the tools. Right. So these are some of the items that we have planned already. But as I said, based on the feedback and based on the inputs that we get from customers and our pre-sales, we are open to add or remove a few items as necessary. All right. So that is all we had for today. We'll now open for any questions.